The unforgettable disappearance of Lydia Monroe, Missoula, Montana, 1998. On a chill October evening in 1998, 22-year-old Lydia Monroe stepped into the shadowed quiet of the Lolo National Forest outside Missoula, Montana, and vanished without a trace. No footprints disturbed the damp earth. No phone calls marked her final moments, and no answers have ever emerged from the dense pine shadows that swallowed her whole. Before we begin, I want to let you know that due to the limited visual materials and the age of this case, there isn't much existing footage or imagery to support the story you're about to hear. As a result, this episode will feature a single image as its background. Think of this as more of an immersive audio experience, a storytelling session that lets your imagination fill in the gaps. Now's the perfect time to grab your headphones, maybe even some popcorn, and settle in. Lydia Monroe was known to friends and family as a thoughtful, quietly determined young woman. At 22, she had just completed her second year at the University of Montana, balancing studies in environmental science with part-time work at a local bookstore. She lived in a modest apartment near downtown Missoula, a city nestled against the vast and rugged landscapes of western Montana, a place of towering pines, rugged mountains, and rushing rivers. Subtle changes had marked the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Colleagues noticed that she was distracted but resolute, often speaking with fascination about the forest ecosystem she studied. She had recently joined a small group dedicated to trail conservation, and in early October, she mentioned plans to spend several days mapping unmarked paths deep in the national forest. Though close, her family understood this was Lydia's way of blending solitude and purpose, a quiet escape from the buzz of town life. On October 17th, a Saturday, Lydia told a co-worker that she intended to hike the Bitterroot Trail loop, a remote and little-traveled path that weaves through old-growth firs and mossy rock outcroppings, several miles west of Missoula. The weather had been overcast, with a persistent drizzle that left the forest floor slick and the air cool. Lydia was said to have packed a day's supplies: water, a small first aid kit, a notebook for her field observations, but no communication devices beyond a basic wristwatch. Her last confirmed sighting was reported by a park ranger on duty at the trailhead shortly after 9 a.m. He recalled a young woman with a green pack and weather boots, quietly noting her intent to complete the loop and return by late afternoon. The ranger's final words to Lydia were a polite reminder about the unpredictability of weather and the importance of sticking to marked paths. Lydia smiled in response and set off on the trail. Hours passed. The sun dipped behind low clouds. When Lydia did not return by evening, concern grew. Friends reported her missing after she failed to show up for a planned study group that evening. Search efforts commenced early the next day, led by the Missoula County Sheriff's Office and volunteer rescue teams. They combed the trailhead, adjacent campsites, and the nearest access roads with no indication of Lydia's passage beyond the initial entry point. The terrain was challenging but not impassable. The forest was dense, shadows stretching long under the canopy. Searchers found no torn clothing, no discarded belongings, no sign of struggle. The only clue, a single faint footprint in the soft mud near a rarely used junction, was ultimately inconclusive, potentially belonging to another hiker days earlier. Investigators reviewed Lydia's recent contacts, examining her social circles and personal communications. Nothing suggested foul play, nor were there any threats or conflicts. Her wallet and identification remained untouched in her apartment. The case was assigned file number MSC 1998-1047, a reference that would soon join the growing list of cold cases haunting the region. For weeks, the community held on to hope, organizing searches and distributing flyers. But as autumn deepened and the forest grew silent beneath early frosts, Lydia Monroe slipped from public consciousness, a ghost swallowed by the vast wilderness she loved. The questions linger. What happened on that isolated trail in Lolo National Forest? Was Lydia's disappearance an accident, a sudden encounter with nature's hazards? Or was something more sinister at play, concealed beneath the timeless green of Montana's woods? This was only the beginning. The trail that day held secrets the forest still refuses to reveal. The disappearance of Lydia Monroe remains a haunting puzzle. Her fate echoes in the cold mountain air, unresolved, unexplained, unforgettable. On October 17, 1998, The day Lydia Monroe disappeared from the Bitterroot Trail loop in Lolo National Forest unfolded in a series of ordinary moments that would soon become enshrouded in mystery. Piecing together her final hours has been a painstaking process for law enforcement, family, and volunteers. A slow unspooling of small, tangible details shadowed by gaps and unanswered questions. Morning, preparation and departure, 7 a.m. to 9:15 a.m. The day began much like any other Saturday for Lydia. According to her roommate, Sarah Thompson, Lydia awoke around 7 a.m. She was quiet but focused, Sarah recalled in a later interview. She brewed coffee, packed her bag carefully. You could tell she was methodical about it. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Lydia's backpack contained basic hiking gear, a water bottle, a small first aid kit, a weathered notebook she used for field observations, a modest supply of food, and a folded map of the Bitterroot Trail. Notably, no cell phone was included. At the time, Lydia did not own one, relying instead on occasional payphone calls and face-to-face contacts. She wore sturdy boots, a dark green jacket, and her favorite woolen hat. Around 8:45 a.m., Lydia left the apartment in downtown Missoula, locking the door behind her. She drove a reliable 1987 Subaru Loyal, a faded blue hatchback known locally as a workhorse, to the trailhead approximately 25 miles west. Surveillance footage from a convenience store along Highway 12 captured her stopping for a coffee and a snack at 8:55 a.m., and a cashier recalled the exchange. Lydia was polite, a little tired, but in good spirits. At 9:10 a.m., Lydia was seen arriving at the Bitterroot Trail parking lot by Park Ranger Mark Ellis. Ellis remembered her clearly, a young woman with a green hiking pack and worn boots. "I gave her the usual reminder about weather and safety," Ellis said. She smiled, thanked me, and said she planned to complete the loop and be back before dark. He noted Lydia's demeanor as calm and confident. Midday, the trail and unseen moments, 9:15 a.m. to 1 p.m. The trail itself was known to be rugged but manageable for someone with Lydia's experience. She had frequently traveled similar paths before, and her studies in environmental science suggested that she understood the risks. Search and rescue logs later reconstructed the route she likely took, beginning at the trailhead, moving west along the riverbank, then climbing through dense fir stands toward an abandoned ranger cabin approximately 3.5 miles in. This cabin was a well-known waypoint, but was not well maintained. Hunters and campers often used it during the season. At approximately 11:30 a.m., a hunter named Frank Dobbs, operating a few miles north on a parallel trail, reported hearing a faint voice, but was unable to locate its source. His account was vague, but it was later investigated by law enforcement. Dobbs said, "It sounded like a woman calling out softly. I thought it might be an animal, but the tone was human." No one else in the area reported hearing anything unusual. At the ranger cabin, no sign indicated recent human presence other than a fresh footprint in the soft mud outside the door. Search teams later documented this print, but it was inconclusive, too faint and partially obscured by subsequent rain. Afternoon, the last confirmed sightings, 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Between 1 o'clock and 2 p.m., Lydia was likely near the midpoint of the loop, heading toward a steep ridge that overlooked the Clark Fork River. A hiker named Lisa Carter passed through the area shortly before 2 p.m. and briefly saw Lydia descending a narrow path. Lisa described her as wearing the same green pack, moving deliberately but not hurried. They exchanged no words, but Lisa noticed Lydia pause briefly at a small clearing, appearing to take notes in her field book. This was the last confirmed visual of Lydia Monroe on the trail. Early evening, the star concerned 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. By late afternoon, Lydia had not returned to the parking lot. Friends and family grew concerned as her planned return time approached and passed. She was expected to be back by 4:30 p.m., yet no sign of her vehicle or footsteps had been noted returning. Her roommate, Sarah Thompson, attempted to call Lydia's apartment at 6:30 p.m., but received no answer. Similarly, co-workers at the bookstore reported she had missed her shift that evening without explanation. The initial 911 call was made at 7:12 p.m. by Sarah, who reported Lydia missing. Dispatch assigned a case number MSC 1998-1047, and immediately alerted the Missoula County Sheriff's Office and Forest Service Rangers. Evening and night. Search begins 7:15 p.m. to 11 p.m. Local authorities launch an immediate search, mobilizing volunteers, sheriff's deputies, park rangers, and K-9 units trained in wilderness tracking. Search leader Deputy Sheriff John Evans recounted the initial operation. "We focus on the trail loop, parking area, and surrounding woods. Given the early onset of darkness and weather conditions, a low drizzle with temperatures dropping, we knew time was critical. Despite exhaustive efforts, no footprints, discarded items, or signs of distress were found near the trailhead or along the primary paths. Searchers expanded the radius to nearby streams and campsites, but no trace of Lydia was uncovered. The first week, expanding the investigation. Over the following days, the investigation deepened. Authorities interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances to establish Lydia's state of mind and rule out possible reasons for her disappearance. Detective Sarah Kim, assigned to the case, stated, "Initial interviews indicated no known enemies, no debts, no personal crises. Lydia was well-liked, motivated, and had no history suggesting voluntary disappearance. However, a few details emerged that complicated the narrative. Red herrings and conflicting leads. Red herring number 1, the stranger on the highway. A man named Joseph Hale reported seeing a woman matching Lydia's description, hitchhiking near Highway 12, roughly 10 miles east of the trailhead, around 5:30 p.m. on the day she disappeared. Hale described the woman as shaken, asking for a ride to town. Law enforcement followed up but found no corroborating witnesses or physical evidence supporting the sighting. Hale's credibility was questioned due to prior minor legal issues, and no connection was definitively established. Red herring number 2, the abandoned car. A week after Lydia's disappearance, a beat-up sedan was found abandoned in a remote clearing approximately 15 miles from the trailhead. The vehicle's registration was traced to an unrelated individual with a criminal record. Some locals speculated the car might have been involved in Lydia's disappearance, but forensic analysis revealed no biological evidence linking the vehicle to her or anyone connected to the case. Media coverage and community response. Local newspapers ran regular updates on the case, emphasizing the community's collective worry and the forest's unforgiving nature. The Missoula Gazette featured a front-page article titled "Vanished in the Pines." Search continued for Lydia Monroe, highlighting the ongoing efforts. The local radio station aired appeals for information, and flyers with Lydia's photograph were distributed in Missoula and surrounding towns. Lydia's parents, Elaine and Robert Monroe, expressed both hope and despair in interviews. Elaine, fighting back tears, told reporters, "We just want her home. We want to know she's safe, or at least what happened to our daughter. The not knowing is the worst." Law enforcement challenges. Despite extensive search operations, the case quickly became a complex puzzle. The rugged terrain, lack of physical evidence, and absence of eyewitnesses complicated matters. Detective Kim acknowledged the difficulty. "This is the kind of case that tests every tool in our kit. We reviewed every angle: accident, foul play, voluntary disappearance, but nothing fits perfectly." The Forest Service initiated routine checks of the Bitterroot Trail to monitor for suspicious activity. The case file grew with reports of minor trespassers and hunters in the area, but none linked to Lydia. Cliffhanger: the disappearance of Lydia Monroe remains an open case in the files of the Missoula County Sheriff's Office. As winter closed in, search efforts scaled back, but never ceased entirely. The community's hope faded, but never fully extinguished. Detective Sarah Kim kept a personal journal on the case, writing in late November 1998. There are moments when the silence of the forest feels almost deliberate, as if it's guarding its secrets. Lydia's story is etched into these woods, waiting for the day the truth emerges. And then, a new development would shake the investigation to its core, a discovery on the Bitterroot Trail that no one expected and no one could explain. The disappearance of Lydia Monroe remains one of Missoula's most haunting cold cases. Over 2 decades have passed since that foggy October day when the young environmental science student vanished from the Bitterroot Trail loop in Lolo National Forest. Despite extensive searches, interviews, and occasional breakthroughs, no definitive answers have emerged. In this final installment of Lydia's story, we explore the key theories that investigators and those close to the case have considered. Each carries its weight of possibility, shadowed by unanswered questions and fragments of evidence that seem to lead nowhere. As the years pass, the truth grows more elusive, yet the hope of unraveling it remains alive. The facts at a glance. Date of disappearance: October 17, 1998. Location: Bitterroot Trail Loop, Lolo National Forest, near Missoula, Montana. Last confirmed sighting: Lydia descending a narrow trail near a clearing at approximately 1:45 p.m. by hiker Lisa Carter. Search efforts: extensive, involving local authorities, park rangers, volunteers, K-9 units. No physical trace of Lydia found beyond a faint footprint near an abandoned ranger cabin. Red herrings: unverified hitchhiking sighting on Highway 12. Abandoned car unrelated to Lydia. Emotional toll: family, friends, and community remain profoundly affected and unresolved. Theory 1: accidental death by natural causes. The most grounded and cautiously supported theory is that Lydia succumbed to the harsh realities of wilderness survival. Lolo National Forest is expansive, with steep terrain, unpredictable weather, and many hazards hidden beneath its serene beauty. The forest on that late October day was damp and chilly, with overcast skies and drizzle. Such conditions can quickly lead to hypothermia, even for an experienced hiker. Given that Lydia was last seen moving steadily but alone, it's plausible she veered off the main path, slipped, or became disoriented in the dense undergrowth. The absence of physical evidence, no body, no belongings, could be explained by the terrain itself. Wild animals, deep underbrush, or flowing waterways could have concealed or scattered remains. The faint footprint near the abandoned ranger cabin might have been hers, a silent marker of a lost moment. This theory aligns with the fact that no known foul play was evidenced, and her disappearance fits a pattern seen in other wilderness cases. Yet it leaves a bitter uncertainty. If this were true, why was no trace ever conclusively found? Theory 2: abduction and foul play. A darker hypothesis is that Lydia fell victim to abduction, possibly by an unknown predator operated within or near the forest. While Missoula is a small city with a strong community spirit, the surrounding wilderness is remote enough to conceal illicit activity. The case file noted no direct threats or suspicious persons in Lydia's life, but stranger dangers lurk beyond social circles. The vague report from Hunter Frank Dobbs of a faint female voice in the unverified hitchhiking sighting on Highway 12 suggests potential human contact post-departure. Investigators considered whether Lydia could have encountered someone with malicious intent. Perhaps someone familiar with the trails, someone who had evaded detection. The abandoned car, discovered weeks later, though unrelated on forensic grounds, raised fears locally about transient criminals or illicit drug activity. Detective Sarah Kim, who worked closely on the case, remarked in an interview years later, "We can't rule out the worst. In cases like this, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. But without hard proof, we can only speculate." Family members feared this possibility most, often pleading for renewed efforts and fresh leads, the weight of what became a heavy burden for those who loved Lydia. Theory 3: voluntary disappearance or escape. Some have suggested that Lydia may have chosen to disappear voluntarily, though this theory seems at odds with the character described by friends and family, a studious, dedicated woman. Investigators considered it, given the lack of evidence for foul play or accident. Voluntary disappearance, while uncommon among young adults with strong community ties, is not unheard of. Motivations can range from personal crisis to mental health struggles or a desire to start anew. In Lydia's case, there were no apparent signs of distress in the weeks prior. Still, subtle emotional shifts, her distracted behavior at work, as well as her expressed fascination with solitude in the forest, have fueled speculation. No financial activity, use of identification, or communication surfaced after her disappearance, which would be unusual if she had intended to vanish deliberately. Additionally, the rugged and unfamiliar terrain would be a poor choice for a planned disappearance. Still, without conclusive evidence, the theory persists as a possible explanation, however unlikely. Additional speculation, the unseen and the unexplained. Beyond these grounded possibilities, some local rumors have ventured into more speculative territory. stories whispered in hushed tones around Missoula campsites. A few have reported mysterious lights seen near the forest on the night Lydia vanished, or strange sounds heard by hikers that are unrelated to known wildlife. Others speak of the area's history of unexplained phenomena, lending an eerie, almost supernatural dimension to the case. While these accounts are anecdotal and uncorroborated by law enforcement, they underscore a profound mystery surrounding Lydia's disappearance. How the forest can seem to swallow whole the known and leave only whispers behind. Investigative challenges and cold case status. With no new leads emerging, the Missoula County Sheriff's Office officially classified Lydia Monroe's disappearance as a cold case by early 2000. Case file MSC 1998-1047 remains open but dormant, periodically reviewed as forensic technologies and investigative methods advance. Detective Sarah Kim, now retired, reflected in a recent conversation. "This case haunts me. The way the forest holds its secrets is maddening. Every small piece of evidence felt like a thread to pull, but the tapestry stayed stubbornly closed." Her family continues to advocate for renewed attention, hoping that someday the truth may surface. Whether through a forgotten witness, a recovered artifact, or a confession, what the evidence tells us and what it doesn't. The faint footprint near the ranger cabin is a tantalizing clue, but insufficient for identification. It neither confirms nor excludes the possibility of accidental injury or foul play. Hunter Dobbs' report of a faint female voice remains unverified, but it introduces the possibility that Lydia was in distress and attempting to call for help. The hitchhiking sighting is widely viewed as unreliable, though it cannot be entirely dismissed given the absence of alternatives. The abandoned car, though unrelated to Lydia, reveals the presence of transient individuals in the broader area, highlighting potential risks. No personal items, remains, or communication from Lydia have ever surfaced, deepening the mystery. The case of Lydia Monroe remains an open wound in the fabric of Missoula's community memory, a story of hope, loss, and enduring questions. Each theory, whether rooted in the harsh realities of nature, the shadows of human threat, or the enigma of personal choice, paints a partial picture that refuses to be completed. What do you think happened to Lydia Monroe? Was it a tragic accident hidden beneath Montana's towering trees? Or could it have been something far more sinister? Perhaps even something beyond our understanding? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more content relating to horrors and missing cases. Lydia's story remains unfinished, waiting for voices to keep her memory alive and, perhaps one day, uncover the truth.